The Isle of Wight lay just ahead, so close the crew could see rooftops through the sea mist. It was March 24th, 1878. The HMS Eurydice was coming home. She was a beautiful ship. A 26-gun frigate, once a proud vessel of war, now repurposed to train young sailors. Her frame was wood and iron, her sails full that afternoon, catching the crisp coastal wind. She had left Bermuda weeks earlier with over 300 men aboard. Cadets, Marines, officers, boys barely out of school. They'd crossed the Atlantic, endured storms, survived illness, and now, after nearly 5 months at sea, England waited just beyond the headland. The sun broke briefly through the clouds. Some of the younger cadets sang. Others wrote letters, talking of roast dinners and warm beds. Some stood at the rails, eyes fixed on the coastline. They were almost there. Then the air changed. Without warning, a cold pressure swept down from the sky. The sea went flat. The light dimmed, and a sudden wind, sharp and roaring, tore into the sails like a blade. It was a white squall, violent, fast, and deadly. The Eurydice had no time to react. She was carrying full sail, and her ballast was high after months of use. The wind hit broadside, the ship heeled violently to starboard. Sailcloth snapped, rigging ripped free and lashed across the deck. Below deck, chaos erupted. Hammocks swung wildly. Lanterns fell. Some men were thrown from their bunks as the ship listed harder and harder, groaning under the force of the storm. Water poured down the hatches. Creaking turned to cracking. Then, collapse. The Eurydice capsized. Men scrambled to escape as she went over. Some never made it out of their bunks. Others were trapped behind doors that jammed under pressure. In the gunroom, officers were crushed beneath toppling beams. Cadets fought to claw their way up slanted hallways filling with seawater. In one compartment, 3 men were found later, fingernails torn, trying to claw their way through a locked hatch. On deck, bodies were thrown into the sea. A few caught hold of floating debris. One clung to a barrel, another to a shattered section of mast. They screamed for help, but the waves drowned out their voices. Only 2 survived. One was a strong swimmer who drifted toward shore. The other was trapped in an air pocket inside the overturned hull, surrounded by dead men, for hours until rescuers heard his muffled cries. The rest died in silence, just minutes from home. From shore, people had watched the whole thing. Fishermen saw the ship lean, then vanish. Some launched boats, but by the time they arrived, the Eurydice was gone. Nothing but rigging and bodies floating in the water. When divers reached the wreck days later, she was resting on her side in just 15 fathoms of water. Inside, they found men still in uniform. Some had broken limbs from the collapse. Others drowned where they stood, with eyes wide open. Ropes were twisted around ankles. Sailors were pinned by fallen spars, crushed against the bulkhead. The ship had gone down fast. So fast, there hadn't even been time to strike the sails. For weeks, the sea gave back its dead. Families came to identify them. Some were unrecognizable. Others were buried in mass graves near the coast. 27 cadets from one class were lost. The oldest was barely 30. The youngest, just 15. The Eurydice had once been considered unsinkable. Built in 1843, she had served in wars, crossed oceans, survived storms. But pride had replaced caution. Her sails should have been reduced, the ballast reset. She should have been ready for the squall. Instead, she became a tomb. The Royal Navy launched an inquiry. It found no criminal negligence, only procedural failure and misjudgment. But that didn't matter to the mothers who buried sons, or to the survivors who still heard the sound of wood splintering and lungs filling with salt water. Years passed. The wreck was partially salvaged, then scuttled. But stories lingered. Sailors in the Channel spoke of a phantom frigate seen just before sudden storms, Prince Edward himself reported spotting a ship near the wreck site that vanished as he approached. Some say the Eurydice still sails, only when the sea goes still and the sky turns black. But ghosts weren't needed to haunt that place. 300 men died within sight of home. They died reaching for the shore, for the letters they'd written, for the people waiting just beyond the cliffs. And the sea took them anyway. Thank you for listening to the Sunken Ledger. Subscribe for more true stories from the depths.